Hi guys, welcome to Origin. In the time I was away there were a few topics that came up that I wanted to comment on. Obviously I couldn't, but now that I have the chance to do that, I can now catch up. This one's been going around for a while, and by a while I mean years, and really this is the topic that's dominated the conversation for the last few years if I look at, well, certainly the people I'm subscribed to, but generally this is what we're talking about. Feminism. More generally, social justice issues. Now, since the last time I talked about stuff like this, huge strides have been made. Several American states have legalised gay marriage. It's even been legalised here in the UK. So to briefly comment on that, from a global perspective, things are tending to an acceptable outcome. Now by that I mean we haven't reached that acceptable outcome yet. It's good that we've legalised it here, it's good that it's been legalised in some states in the US, but as long as it's not legal everywhere, the situation still isn't acceptable, it still isn't good. We're getting there, but it's still not good enough. Hopefully things will keep tending towards that outcome where it's legal everywhere, and I don't see any reason why that shouldn't be the trend. Why it certainly seems to be the trend that we're moving towards that, and that's good. The Winter Olympics in Russia and everything that happened around that demonstrates this point. We're not there yet. Even though things are a lot better here, they're legal here, and we're very open to the ideas here. We need to make our videos, we need to spread our ideas on the internet in real life, generally towards other countries, so that they can legalise it too. But I really want to focus on feminism here. In particular, I want to address this general idea that's going around that feminism has achieved what it set out to achieve, and that modern day feminism is about female superiority or outright misandry, or at the very least is seeing sexism in statistics where it can all be explained by just natural variation. As a purely hypothetical example, let's say that one company in one industry hires men and women, but there's more men than women. The feminist stereotyped by these ideas would ignore all context, would ignore any other possible explanation for why this might be the case, and say, look at that, that's sexism. That company is sexist. The fact that this argument is made by so many people means that I have to repeat something which I've said many times before and will no doubt have to keep saying constantly throughout the life of this channel. If there's one thing I see far too often, it's people generalising. If you're quite heavily involved in feminism on the internet, whether that's being a feminist yourself or just speaking to feminists, lots of different types and across lots of different websites, then if you make a statement like this, you're either really stupid or just ridiculously dishonest. Feminism, as with any very broad philosophy, encompasses all different types of people, with all different types of opinions on various different issues. Just as a handful of examples, there are radical feminists, sex-positive feminists, feminist socialists, there are feminists with long hair, feminists with short hair, male and female feminists, feminists who identify as intersex or genderqueer, feminists who support abortion, feminists who oppose abortion, feminists who oppose any kind of sexual objectification of women, and feminists who actually work in the sex industry. You could even have two people who are ideologically identical, but one of them associates himself or self-identifies as a feminist, and the other wants nothing to do with the label because of the stigma associated with it. And the fact that there are people who don't want to use that label because of that stigma, the fact that that stigma even exists, that proves that even in this community that declares itself to be and strives to be rational, many of us still like to carpet bomb entire philosophies affecting people who want nothing to do with the people that we're really trying to attack. When we don't target, when we don't go with surgical precision at those particular targets. If you say, I am a feminist, what you're saying is, I, to some extent, care about the fair treatment of women. When you say that you have a problem with modern day feminism, these are the people you're attacking. All of them. I know that people will continue to misunderstand this, and I know that more people will keep coming who don't understand this, and I will need to keep saying this time and time again. But please, if you haven't already gained an understanding of this concept, do so. The last thing I want to say pertains to social justice in general, and the battles that they choose to pick, if you like. While I'm not heavily involved in the community, while I don't visit it a lot, the thing that tends to stand out to me, the thing that people tend to do in this community, is criticize people for using certain words. And when I say criticize, I mean treat as completely unforgivable. I.e., even if you've shown a strong commitment to social justice issues, if you've ever used a word, even 5 years ago, and it's, on a video on YouTube, they will hunt you down for it. And this is based on a real life example, certainly something I'm thinking of that happened about a year or two ago. Now, I've talked about how you should approach problem words or slurs in the past, and my position hasn't changed at all. A word is an arrangement of letters that conveys a certain meaning. Over time, through the natural usage of this word, that meaning can change. It doesn't have to, but it can. And just like how incremental changes explain the diversity of life on our planet, that explains why we have so many languages. For that reason, going after words is completely pointless. Even if you get one word stigmatized to such an extent that no one would dare use it, and this has happened, the people who would have been using this word will more than likely just find another word that they can use. And certainly you won't have changed their behaviour at all. Even if through banning the word you highlight the seriousness of the problem, and that leads to a prevention of that behaviour in other people, that's purely secondary to banning the word. You could have just gone after the behaviour to begin with. If you're faced with a situation where someone insults you by using one word that's designed to attack a particular feature of you, be that your skin colour, your sexual orientation, or your gender identity, the best way to deal with that is to say, yes, I am that word. Think of it this way. That word is the box in which they're carrying their weapon, which is the meaning of the word. What you're doing when you say, yes, I am that word, is taking that weapon out of their hands. You're changing the meaning. When you apply this idea to groups, the entire group should say collectively, we are this word. Now you might say, well, you've just argued this before, they could just find another word. And then you take that word and you change its meaning. You say, yes, I am that word. With words that are already heavily stigmatized, that already cause a lot of offense, this will obviously be harder, but you have to still try. And it's not just the best way of dealing with that kind of attack. It's essential that we do it. And here's why. Let's take a word that I can use no problem because it applies to me. A word that's normally used against white people, which is cracker. To me, cracker has zero offensive value. I've never heard anyone call me that in my life. I don't see any reason why I ever would, unless of course, the YouTube trolls spring up right now, but let's say that wasn't true. Let's say if you called me that, I would, it would be more hurtful than anything else you could ever do. And most importantly, you know that it would have that effect. Now there are words, and there are many people for whom this applies, where that very much is the case. Simply knowing that fact would make you just a bit racist, because it means you will be treating me differently based on my skin colour. You have to, otherwise he caused me a huge amount of offence. But then I say, yes, I am a cracker, and you know what? I like being one. Right off the bat, that's that issue done, and that's one less thing you can't say to me. What really matters, what you should really be going after here, is the mentality that results in people using these words. The words themselves, there's no point going after them, as I've said. So now for something practical. Let's say that someone comes along, they've had a relatively sheltered upbringing, and by that, I'm not talking about money or anything, I'm talking about awareness of the types of different people that are in the world. They'll know about all the different ethnicities, they'll know about, obviously, male and female. They'll have heard of the concept of people being gay or bisexual, but maybe the concept of someone being transgender or genderqueer is a bit less familiar to them. Now, because they don't have this familiarity, because they're quite ignorant of these particular subjects, they might use some of these words inadvertently. They're not doing it out of genuine callousness or hatred. They're simply doing it because they don't know it has any offensive value for these communities. Now, since these people aren't setting out to offend anyone, they're simply ignorant, what you do is you respond by telling them about transgender people, genderqueer people, and you encourage them to find out more about it. Now, here's a key point. Even if you disagree with what I said about words, you feel like, they just shouldn't be used, they shouldn't be reclaimed, that there's some value in them having that offensive power because, I've heard this particular argument before because it serves as a reminder of how hurtful, these words can be, how damaging the concept of racism or homophobia or transphobia or whatever it is can be. Even then, the fact that they're more aware of the issues should mean that they use these words less, and eventually not at all. But just as having less physical weapons in the world, like guns, nuclear weapons, knives, things like that, is a good idea, having less words with these kind of power as well, to me, is also a good idea. And why keep a word to remind you of that offensive power when you've got hundreds of years of history of exactly this kind of thing happening that you can look up in any book, on Wikipedia, on anywhere you can imagine? To me, that history serves as a much more solid reminder of how damaging these attitudes can be. So to summarise, good job UK and some parts of America for legalising gay marriage. May more countries follow. Being a feminist only tells people that you have some vague concern for the rights of women. So if you're responding to someone with more specific views than that, then target your criticisms more precisely towards that group of people rather than all feminists. And don't go after the words, go after the behaviour that leads people to use those words. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.